Oops. Alright, hello guys and welcome to the PiG Daily. Today is the 25th of May 2016 and today we have a very special daily, except I say that every day, which makes it lose a little bit of meaning over time, doesn't it? Nonetheless, I am very excited for today's episode. It is going to be about Nerchio's adaptive, agile, anti-mutalisk Zerg vs. Zerg. A very cool style which he plays, and just generally something where Nerchio has shown absolutely astounding understanding of the matchup in recent times. He looked amazing at DreamHack Tours. He ended up finishing in second place, just behind Showtime. He ended up losing, what, 4-3 in the finals? But he killed a couple of really good Zerg players there, including the one and only, everyone's favorite American Zerg, Scarlett. So, or Canadian, I guess, right? American, Canadian, same thing. Everyone on that continent's the same, right? Yeah, but they had a really cool series, and that's what we want to be looking at today. So, today's episode, we're going to be looking at how to fight Mutalisks without your own Mutalisks and without using Hydralisks, using a very different style. And we're also going to look at a lot of very smart decisions, which I was especially impressed by how Nerchio thought of things on the fly. Because what we see is a couple of very action-packed games, and while we've seen creative ways to deal with mutas in the past, it's usually in a slower-paced game, where the player can just kind of say, hey, I'm just going to head in this direction, I'm going to get up a response, and, you know, just go down this path. It's very passive to that point. It's a single decision. What we see in these games is actually a lot of decisions going on. We see Nerchio constantly adapting, constantly adjusting the way he's playing. So let's dive on into game and let's just look through the series. Which one is it? There we go. We found our scene. Alright guys, so this is game 1 in the series. We're also going to be looking at game 4 in the series. It was a 3-1 victory for Nerchio. So let's fast forward through as we do and just take a look at what's going on. Nerchio's up here in the top left, Scarlett's in the bottom right. We're going to see both players open up quite safe because it's Frozen Temple, pull first builds for both of them. Scarlett opts for the faster gas. They both expanded about the same time. Nerchio's gas isn't too far behind. He's about 40-50 gas behind. Slightly more economic, but nothing to write home about. And, you know, they both do the standard Ling pokes and all this sort of stuff. We do see Scarlett go for an exceptionally fast +1 melee upgrade, so that's very cool. And then a delayed Baneling Nest. Meanwhile, Nerchio just went for a faster Baneling Nest, going for a very typical fast third base build. So we do see a bit of divergence from each other's play there. Scarlett, of course, is a little bit afraid because her Baneling Nest is so late. But Nerchio's not all inning or anything. He's just wanting to put pressure on. He does that. They skirmish. They trade reasonably evenly. Maybe goes slightly in the favor of Nerchio. And behind this, Scarlett's actually taking up to a very fast lair. So she's trying to go a bit of Ling upgrade into 2-base muta. Meanwhile, Nerchio has no tech. He just starts his own +1 melee. Goes for his own Ling upgrade. So this is already a bit of an odd game. Both players going for Ling upgrades. That's a bit odd. They have a lot of back and forth with Zerglings. The important thing we're going to see though is that even though Scarlett micros well, takes good trades, she struggles to ever get a third base up in the midst of the action. Nerchio has that production advantage, and once the drones can actually stabilize and mine, they're an economy advantage as well. But Scarlett is teching towards Mutalisks, and in the midst of all the Lingbane madness, she is getting out those super high-tech units. I think one of the things which impressed me so much about this series is watching it. I was rooting a little bit for Scarlett. Been watching a bunch of her stream, been following the way she was playing, and I felt like she was playing very well this series. Which is why I was even more impressed when I saw Nerchio win 3-1 so decisively. I felt like Scarlett was not playing bad at all. And yet some of the games were almost one-sided in Nerchio's favor. Almost. I don't think any of them were completely one-sided, but he just looked incredibly decisive and strong. So we saw Scarlett just kind of get out her Mutalisks, She's still posturing them up with her Zerglings. But interestingly enough from Nerchio, rather than, even though he has such late tech, he doesn't try and get Hydralisks. He doesn't try and get anything else. He masses up Queens and starts taking towards Hive. He's got his Infestation Pit about to finish, and he'll start a Hive after that. And most importantly, he continues to counterattack with Zerglings at all times. And just through all the action and all the pressure he's been applying, Scarlett's third base gets up so incredibly late. Defends with this pack of Queens, adds a few Infestors, and now a Hive. So let's fast forward from there. There's still so much harassment in this game. Neither side really get up to that big economy where they can afford large amounts of static. But notice how Nerchio keeps on pressuring with Zerglings. He makes it very hard for Scarlett to focus just on her Mutalisks, trying to find holes to do damage or anything like that. Nerchio also has a few Infestors out, so if those Mutas ever get too far out of position, things can go very bad for them very quickly. And Nerchio's plan here, as his Hive finishes, he's got his double Evo Chamber up, is just to go towards Ultralisks. Ultralisks are the ultimate endgame unit in Zerg vs Zerg. They're super powerful. And we see he's been looking with this Ling counters and aggression for so long. He's been looking for openings. And finally, he manages to pull Scarlett out of position, distracts her with those Lings, runs in here to the third, kills some drones, in the main kills a few more drones, gets some nice damage done, and behind that his Ultra Caverns getting well underway. The back and forth continues, lots of Ling counters, he continues to split them in and do very nice damage, sliding these Ling counters in whenever Scarlett isn't looking, constantly pulling the big pack of her Zerglings away so the other ones can get in and do damage. And we will see Ultralisks then come across the map. Chitinous Plating will kick in shortly. Scarlett can't deal with them. The Ultras and Zerglings just shrekking the economy, ignoring the Mutalisks almost completely. And in a way, Nerchio wins this game without ever actually facing the Mutalisks. He kind of just ignores them. He just makes sure he can't get killed by them at home. Never thinks about actually killing them on Scarlett's side of the map, knowing that he's going to have the better Ultra count and that Ultras are so good against Mutalisks. They're so good. Finally, the Queens and Infestors come across. The Mutas can't fight that at all. There's just too much transfuse on the Ultras as well. And Nerchio wins the game. So that's your fast-forwarded preview of this game. Spent a little bit longer going through that than I probably meant to. So that's fine. Let's go back and actually talk about what goes on. So in terms of the opening, Nerchio finds himself in a very similar spot to Scarlett. His gas is slightly later, that's fine. What we notice is Nerchio plays a very typical opening in this game one. I don't feel like Nerchio goes into this game with any massive predisposition towards what he thinks Scarlett's going to play. If he'd been watching Scarlett stream, watching her online cups, he would know she loves mutas, and she loves 2-base muta. She also does enjoy the Ling upgrades. But he goes into this with no predisposition. A very safe opening, just getting his Queens up, droning up, poking around with 4 Zerglings to try and see what's going on and force a response. Gets down a Baneling Nest. And because he opens, and this is so standard, right? Ling speed, Baneling Nest as soon as he gets to get 50 gas after the Ling speed. Very just standard safe play. He's going to send a drone over to take his 3rd base. We'll see that now. And this is such typical play. It's nothing crazy. What's great, and the reason I'm so excited about this particular game, is yeah, Nerchio starts out in this position where he's going into the series saying anything could happen. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to try and blind counter what I think Scarlett's style is. But he begins to adapt her very quickly once he gets a handle on her. So we see that even in this game, we're going to see him adapting once he realizes Mutalisks are on the way, really changing up his style once he sees how late her 3rd is. And we're also going to be watching game 4 in the series, as I said before. And that's a game where Nerchio says, look, I've played 3 games against you. You've gone for Mutalisks very quickly every game. I am going to start actually hard countering you. I'm going to make that big adjustment where I'm maybe taking a little bit of a risk in order to really do something very powerful against what you're doing. And I think Nerchio's ability to just bounce between different styles, to be very flexible and malleable. It's what made him such a powerful player, in his Zerg vs Zerg especially, but in all of his series. Notice at this point, all he's doing is pressuring with Ling Bane. He's not sure what Scarlett's up to. Probably until about now, actually. If we go back about 20 seconds, check this out. He's like, okay, I'm putting on Ling Bane pressure. And Nerchio's got to think about this. He's thinking, what can I see? He knows that there is a Baneling nest not quite finished. So he says, oh, your Baneling nest is late. He knows that there's no third base, whereas he's got the more standard third base. It's almost finished. It's well underway. He hasn't got any tech. So he's thinking, well, if you're not going for the third base, you've got a bit less Ling Bane than me. I'm the one that's both attacking you. Where's your money going towards? So he knows there's some sort of tech behind this. And the first thing that pops into a player's mind is 2-base muta. He's got to be thinking, especially if you're making a Baneling nest rather than a Roach Warren, because if you're going for a Nidus Worm or some sort of Roach tech, you'd have a Roach Warren and an Evolution Chamber in the wall. But Nerchio says to himself, look, you don't have that. You're still going Banelings and Zergling speed. I think this has to be probably Mutalisk play. It actually is, but there is actually a melee upgrade. I don't think there's any way Nerchio could infer that there's this melee upgrade out so fast, unless he actually is familiar with this build that Scarlett's been doing. Even with that though, he says the follow-up to an upgrade is almost always going to be mutas. So what can I do against that? And if we put this on Nerchio's camera, he's microing his butt off here, doing a bunch of fighting, and in the midst of exerting this pressure, notice he's not like set on killing Scarlett. He's going to drop that Evo Chamber. He says, look, if you're going mutas, I'm going to go for upgraded Zerglings. And upgraded Zerglings are a fantastic decision against Mutalisks, especially in this scenario. So as we come to this point, Nerchio is already forming a game plan. Let's pop out very quickly. This is like too close on my face, isn't it? I really need to I'm gonna get a new webcam. I'm just gonna use my normal outer game, my normal one, because then you can actually see my body and it's not as weird. We're gonna use that overlay. But yeah, what we're gonna be looking at here, right, is the idea of upgraded Zerglings versus Mutalisks. And this is something not too many players are too familiar with, but basically, if you ask most pro gamers, they'll say upgraded Lings rock against Mutalisks. They're awesome. The reason is Mutalisks are actually immobile when compared to Speedlings. If you get Speedlings with upgrades, you can wreck on upgraded Speedlings. Even a single upgrade, think about it this way. A Zergling does 5 damage, attacks very quickly. If you get an upgrade, it gives +1 damage. That is a 20% increase. Almost no other unit has such a drastic damage increase from that single upgrade. Likewise, Carapace will lower your opponent's damage by 20%. So it's something which makes a massive difference in Ling battles. It really allows you to just wreck them. Not only that, but if you've got Ling upgrades, especially if you have more production with your Zerglings, then you can just kind of swarm in from multiple angles. And the mutas can't really be everywhere at once. If you think about it, a Mutalisk is 200 resources, not to mention all the teching up and gas mining that's gone into getting it. 200 resources, 8 Zerglings costs the same, 200 resources. It's only 25 minerals for a Zergling. But if you imagine one Mutalisk trying to defend a mineral line from 8 Zerglings, it's going to take a long time to kill any of those Zerglings. You're going to lose the entire mineral line, right? So that's something where Mutalisks on their own can't really defend against them. What Mutalisks really excel at, especially against a player who's playing ground, is getting across the map and forcing a big reaction. But what upgraded Zergling says is, look, we're even more hard-hitting and better at shredding economy than you are. So all we need to do is threaten your worker lines, come in from multiple angles without just throwing the units away, and your Mutalisks are going to be forced to stay home. And then once we've got that position where we kind of neutralize your Mutalisks by not letting you push across the map with them, that's when we can build up our economy. That's when we can drone hard. So if we look back in game, what we can see is Nerchio's entire game plan is based around this. At this point, he's adding the evolution chamber. He knows he has the faster third, and he's already got pressure going on. So what can he do with this pressure? He can actually delay Scarlett from ever securing this third base, or at least for a very long time. Even though she has Banelings of her own, notice he's not just trying to commit in and kill her workers. He sees that she's got the defense needed, and he says, I'm going to chill here. I'm just going to posture. I'm going to get some Ling upgrades at home to make sure I'm going okay. I'm going to squeeze out some extra drones for my third base, because I know you don't have one. So if I can get ahead on that third base, I'm going to be in a good position. And the thing is, I know a lot of players looking at this would say, well, why can't Scarlett just make a few more Banelings and get out there and just put the third down? This comes down to where the players are committing. Where have they put their money so far? And this is where we want to start thinking about that. So, gotta stop saying so constantly. So what I want to look at is just a little kind of thought about what's going on. So Scarlett is spending her money on a bunch of different things, all this tech and upgrades, whereas all Nerchio spent his money on early on was the hatchery, the economy, and the Zergling Baneling. He added his own tech, well, his upgrade quite a bit later. He wasn't really committing to that early. So what we see is a fundamental difference in what the players are committing to. And I think the best way to talk about this is to take a look at this. So I've written up some notes here, and let's talk about the theory. And this is one of the best things you can ever do as a player, is think about the theory of what players are spending on. So Nerchio is spending his money on army and economy. We said he was building the Lingbane to pressure. He was building the economy. So we talked about that. Scarlett, on the other hand, wants to spend money on economy and tech. Remember, she was just building up her gases, her 2-base economy, her upgrade, and then going for lair and mutalisks. So she's getting that tech, the economy, and she was about to drop a 3rd base as well. She was thinking of it, but then Nerchio put the pressure on. So Nerchio's attacking constantly, and he forces Scarlett instead to spend money on army, but she's already trying to invest in economy to get up all those gases. Whereas keep in mind, let's look up here in this game. Nerchio doesn't have those gases. Nerchio is only just adding a 2nd gas. You might think, oh, they both only have about 2 bases of workers. Not at all. Check it out. Scarlett has to commit to all these gases mining so much earlier. That's a lot more economy she has to invest in non-mineral economy. In that gas economy. So that actually forces it to make her a little bit more spread out in this scenario. It makes it very hard for her to afford everything at once. So Scarlett's money is now spread too thin. Look, she can't afford a lot of army. She can't secure a 3rd base very easily. Now, Nerchio's tech is slower, but he has that 3rd base over Scarlett. But Scarlett's advantage is in the mutalisks. However, the mutalisks are nullified by the mobile ling counters. So as long as Nerchio can stop them coming across the map, then they will never get a chance to come across, force spore crawlers, start killing drones, force that big response. The thing is, they're not as mobile as lings. You know, her lings can't match Nerchio's. In this case, they actually can because she's got upgrades. The problem is she can't, because she can't build as many Zerglings. She just doesn't have as much minerals because she still wants to get her mutalisks out. So we see in this game a really interesting kind of matchup in that regard where Nerchio is saying, I'm going to have more economy than you. I'm going to have more Zerglings than you. But my gas is way behind. So even though I'm ahead in mineral economy, sorry, he's not ahead in economy, he's ahead in mineral economy. He's going to have more mineral mining, he's going to have more Zerglings, and he's really just going to keep fighting. And notice Scarlett here starts to really put Nerchio on the back foot, especially because her melee upgrade finish, she was a bit greedy, you know, getting that before Baneling Nest early on. She starts to take some really good trades. And to the untrained eye, this looks fantastic for Scarlett. She's coming in here, she's trading really well. But keep in mind what we said. In order to build this army, she can't keep investing in economy. She's already invested in 2 of the pillars of StarCraft. Tech, well, tech, upgrades, so that's like a lot of tech. You can kind of put upgrades and tech together under the same sort of banner. Economy, in terms of the gases, so she rushed up those gases, and now she's being forced into army. So she doesn't get a chance to fully flesh out her economy by going for the double economy, the gas and the 3rd base. She just can't afford it. So even though she's putting great pressure on now, she's really trying to use that +1 melee. She's getting some fantastic trades without having the 3rd base behind it. And with Nerchio's superior economy, I mean, I know it's only a few more drones on the 3rd, but with his superior economy and definitely his superior lava count, 3 hatcheries injecting, he's actually in a fantastic position because as soon as he holds this wave of lings, Scarlett just doesn't have that much production. She doesn't have that much reinforcement. In the work account, we see Scarlett's only at 29 drones versus the 33 of Nerchio. Nerchio can afford to trade more than Scarlett can. If we look at the units lost, he's actually down 800 resources. But because he has more minerals, he can afford these trades. He can take them. He can take it on the chin and bounce back. And this is a pattern we see when we start to analyze games deeply. You see that there are situations where even when a player is trading badly, it's okay because of the situation they put themselves in. And this is where I think Scarlett actually did overcommit to the aggression a little bit. Potentially could have taken that third earlier. But from Nerchio, the plan was really fantastic. His own melee is about to catch up, at which point they're on even upgrades again. Scarlett's trying to continue the pressure. Her spy is about to finish, but she's only at 34 drones. She doesn't even have 2 bases fully saturated. Look at that. That's really quite bare. Now we're going to hit the point where the Mutalisks come out very soon. So let's take a look. Scarlett's trying to finish off that 2 base saturation. She's adding drones, Mutalisks. She's even getting +2 melee, so her Zergling's going to be absolutely killer. And Nerchio's lair is only just starting when the Mutalisks are popping. And so many players would look at this and say, you're just dead. You don't have any response. But he does have a response. The Zerglings. Not to mention just Zerglings, but Queens and Spores are quite decent. The problem is, they cost a lot of money. So at this point, Mutalisks come on out, and here's where we see a very interesting scenario. Now, most players, even if they have the Zerglings to buy time, would still panic and build lots and lots of Spore Crawlers, lots of Queens, try to cover everything. At this specific scenario, Nerchio has been pushing his economy quite hard. He's going up to about 50 drones. Look at this, third base almost fully saturated. So once again, a huge lead on that mineral income compared to a third base not even started. If we look at it, we can see he's only up a couple hundred minerals. That's because a lot of these drones have just popped and there's a few more about to pop. But once that registers on the income tab, we will see a huge income lead for Nerchio. So right now, Nerchio doesn't have a huge number of Zerglings. He can't just run across the map and, you know, counterattack and keep Scarlett at home too easily. Also, because she doesn't even have a third base, he doesn't have an easy target to punish. You know, she can defend her natural with Queens, the Spine, maybe there might be some Banelings here. But because he's got the third base, he's saying, look, I just need to defend for a little bit, but I don't need Spore Crawler, Spore Crawler, Spore Crawler, Spore Crawler, Spore Crawler, that huge defense. If you think about it, if you're sitting purely defensive with no way to pull the mutas home, you need full coverage. You need to cover everything, which usually means a response of about 4 Queens and a whole bunch of other things. So I really want to drive home exactly how much money this costs. When you want to be doing this, this is like insane. 4 Queens, all that's actually, I think I have written it up. I have, so let's go back in game. Maths. There we go, maths. The standard anti-air setup. And this is what Nerchio manages to skip out on in this game because he's about to flood out Zerglings and pull the Mutalisks home. They'll only get a few seconds to poke around at his bases. They're not going to be able to find the holes. So he just goes with that bare minimum of Spore Crawlers we talked about, 1 in each mineral line. Skips all the others, doesn't even have extra Queens yet. And that saves him so much money because the normal anti-air setup, if you've got no way of pulling the mutas home or responding to them otherwise, is exactly what we see here. 4 Queens and 8 Spore Crawlers. As I said, you need usually about 2 or 3 spores per base across 3 bases. It's about 8 Spore Crawlers, 4 Queens as well. That's so much money. So the Queens themselves is 600 minerals and 400 minerals for that drones that turn into the spores. That's also 8 lava as well, which is significant. And then 600 minerals for the cost of the spores. That's a total of 1,800 minerals, almost 2,000 minerals to defend all your bases from spores. Now, especially in this low economy situation, let's imagine we spent 1,800 minerals. Well, 1,800 minerals is equivalent to 72 Zerglings or 36 drones. I mean, where the hell are you going to find that, especially in a low economy game? Nerchio has 46 drones. Where is he going to find 1,800 minerals? That's literally an entire minute of his mining. And keep in mind, we're only 7 minutes into the game. This would be like something like 25% of his total money mined this game in terms of minerals. Like just like an insane amount. And that's something which he can't afford. Whoa, that's the wrong button. So now let's look at what Nerchio does to avoid that cost. Let's look at him build these Zerglings and use their mobility to come across the map. He's still just defending right now, really sloppy leaving those 4 overlords out of the map. And here we see the threat of the Zerglings. Scarlett already forced to pull the Mutalisks home. She only has 5 Mutalisks. Remember, the third base is only just starting now for her. And what do we see on Nerchio's side? He's like, alright, well, I'll build the extra Queens. I won't be completely bare bones on my defense. But very soon he's going to build a lot of Zerglings and explode on into that. So he's just skimping on the defense as much as possible, reacting, knowing that Scarlett's economy is so low, knowing she can't just build a huge wave of 12, 15 Mutalisks as she would be able to have 3 bases. Just staying quite low on that, and here we go. The Zergling counterattacks begin. Small at first, while he tops off his economy. Takes the 6 gases, takes the infestation pit so we can go straight to Hive. So it starts out quite small, but this is distracting Scarlett. It's making her freak out a little bit. Her Mutalisks pull home for a second there, then they turn around. This is making it very hard for her to put her attention fully on the aggression. Nerchio adds just 2 infestors here, no pathogen glands, just 2 infestors to help buff the queens up. And his queens are very good at sticking together and chasing off those mutas. Right at this point, where she gets to a point of mutas that could actually fight, Nerchio is actually getting enough energy for transfuse. He's getting more queens out, and here we see mass Zergling production. Scarlett has just taken her 3rd, she's barely managing to mine off it. She's catching up in economy little bit by little bit. And her Mutalisk count is also getting out of control, but this coincides. Just as the Mutalisk count hits 14, it can start coming in and sniping, like coming from all different angles. Nerchio adds a few staggered spore crawlers, a few slightly slower ones to cover up those exposed angles, and out comes the big flood of Zerglings. Nerchio saying, we're going to go across that map. We've got to pull those mutas home. We've got to put pressure on. We've got to try and use this mineral income lead. We know her 3rd was so late. Let's put the pressure on. Let's try and force mistakes. The upgrades are even, 1-1 versus +2. Remember, each upgrade, each carapace cancels out a melee upgrade, so it works out to be identical upgrades there. And this is the point where once Nerchio actually commits to that huge wave of speedlings, suddenly he starts to find lots of damage, being very clever with how he pulls that pack away. That's actually such a smart tactic, by the way. Let's look at that. That's so clever. This is something you can do, and if your opponent's not watching closely, they won't be able. Their units are just gonna do crap basically. Scarlett sees all the lings in one big pack, so she simply A moves her Zerglings. Nerchio, realizing he doesn't want to fight them, even if he trades okay, he wants to get in and kill the drones. That's where the value is. He pulls off a few of his Zerglings on the top. So look, they already pulled off, and he's going to run those and lure her Zerglings away. Even though these Zerglings just get surrounded, they don't really do anything, that buys valuable time for these Zerglings to get damage done. These Banelings here, even though Scarlett tries to pull away, she's just slightly too slow. The Spine Crawler hit the wrong Baneling, loses a whole bunch of drones in there. And the damage starts to happen. And this Mutalisk count never really had the time to get the damage done that it wanted to. The threat of Zerglings forced it to be quite defensive at first. The extra queens kind of zoned it out. Its count wasn't really that high, and she always had the threat of this big speedling attack coming in. And keep in mind, what's the game plan behind this? Nerchio isn't focusing on actually fighting the Mutalisks. He's just going for the Ultralisk Cavern, adding more and more upgrades. He's got 2-2 on the way, continuing to throw these speedling counterattacks in. Just from multiple angles. Once again, these speedlings trying to pull the speedlings of Scarlett away and distract them, while these speedlings run in to try and get the damage done. Splitting them into multiple bases, making it as hard as possible for Scarlett to defend this. And every drone that he can kill is fantastic. Scarlett's already behind on tech. She has nice upgrades. She does have better upgrades, in fact. 2-1 versus 1-1. But Nerchio is getting ultras out, and if you can get your ultras out faster, Mutalisks can't do much to them. Even with +2 attack, once chitinous plating finishes, it's going to take an obscene amount of hits for Mutalisks to actually kill them. So the person with a stronger ground army, keeping in mind ultras just destroy Zerglings. If you can just get in there with ultras and Zerglings on multiple angles, your lings will tear apart their drone line, your ultras will tear apart any defensive Zerglings. And Nerchio is just absolutely relentless. Knowing the Mutalisks, even though they could just kill these units for free, the mutas are harassing, they're attacking. He says, if you're attacking me, I'm going to go and take trades where your Mutalisks aren't. I'm going to abuse the fact that you don't have those in position. Definitely Scarlett could be criticized here for not having her Zerglings in the right angles to defend all these different situations. But it's something which Nerchio also just was very on top of executing. did very nicely. And as we see in the final stages, he just has ultras out too early. Scarlett's economy has been taking too much of a beating. Most importantly, Nerchio did not panic earlier on in the game. Let's put this on Nerchio's camera. He did not panic early in the game. He did not freak out against the mutas. He only had a 46 drone economy, yet he responded with a minimal number of spore crawlers. He used Ling counterattacks to buy time, to pull the mutas back a little bit, and just added extra queens, teched on up to Hive, never thought about let's push with Hydras, let's go to that final answer. And this is a situation we've seen before. We've seen Dark do it, but usually in much more static games, where he's already got 3 base economy when the mutas are popping and he just drops like a dozen spore crawlers across his bases, has 8 queens up already and he's fine. In this game, it was much more action-packed, and in the midst of all the Ling Bane battles, Nerchio managed to balance this response incredibly well, and that's what's so damn impressive about it. Slides in here with units. It's not a very pretty endgame. It's just kind of rolling units in from every angle, and then Scarlett just can't deal with so many different attacks from so many different directions. Eventually, ultras plus just mass queen transfuse comes through the front. No way the mutas can fight that many queens with fungal support. Ultras with transfuse versus ultras without transfuse. And GG. Okay, we're going to go look at the game number 4 as well now, because keep in mind this game, Nerchio opened up with a very generic build order. Defensive Ling, well, I guess he did Ling Bane pressure, but the Banelings are there to keep him safe. He's doing pressure to just scout what his opponent's doing, check what's happening, taking a third base behind the pressure. He's just droning on up, and then he's kind of like, wait, why aren't you taking a third? What's going on? Taking a fast third is very standard in Zerg vs. Zerg at high level. And then he says, well, if you're going mutas, I'm going to go upgraded Zerglings. I'm going to multi-prong a lot. I'm going to keep delaying your third, keep fighting. I'm going to try and build my mineral economy a lot higher than yours. Now, why was he so focused on mineral economy? We already talked about that. Because he knows he's going to have to build some of that anti-air. Even though he skips some of the anti-air response, he still has to put a lot of minerals into that. So he's very focused on saying, well, Lings are going to keep me safe from your Lings. They're also going to push you home. My queens and spores are going to protect from the mutalisks. So I don't really need gas that fast. I just need a little bit of gas to get my lair going, to get my upgrades going, a little bit of gas to get my infestation pit going, to get my hive going. It's only really once he's established on 3 base economy and he's very safe that he wants to add all of his gases. So what we did see in that game, and I probably should have pointed it out as I'm talking about it now, but we're already loading up the next replay as these are old replays and they'll take a while, is he said to himself, you know what, we'll just get a second gas quite early, and similar to some of the previous sessions I've been talking about, he really focused on minerals. But in this case, it made perfect sense. It wasn't just him playing a defensive macro greedy style. He was saying, all I'm building is drones, lings, and queens. These are the only units I need right now, spore crawlers as well. All they cost is minerals, so gas isn't important. So he said, as long as I can get that third base up on minerals, while constantly denying Scarlett's third, I'm going to have the inherent advantage there. And that worked out very well. All the replays were broken, as I've told you guys in all my previous sessions. Each time a patch comes out, and they bring one out right after a big tournament replay pack gets released, which is very frustrating for me, but whenever they do that, it does break the replays, so it takes a little bit for this to load. We are now loading the next replay, which means shouldn't be more than a minute, maybe a minute and a half at most for that to load the older game version. We'll see how it goes. Let's take a look at our notes and see, did we miss anything? Is there something we forgot to talk about? By the way, if you guys have any questions, shout them out in chat. Use the @x5_pig tag. I'll answer those at the end of looking at the next replay. So anytime up until then, just use the @x5_pig tag and we will get to those. We talked about how the Lings have mobility, how Ling upgrades reign supreme against mutas. That's something we're going to talk about a lot in this next game. Because remember, that game was very dicey because Scarlett had that early +1 melee. Because Scarlett had +1 melee, her Ling counter during that stage when Nerchio was trying to get his third up, like that was really close to almost breaking him. The reason she got away with that, though, is she got away with that because Nerchio, she took a risk. She skipped her Baneling Nest early, she went straight for the fastest possible melee, whereas Nerchio did a more balanced build. But once he hung on, he had the third base, so he was still okay at the end of that. The replay is up, so we'll be diving into that in just a moment. Fantastic. All right, I think we covered all of the main points with that one, so we'll dive here into the next game. And look at this one. Piece of shit, man. Really loud music every single time. There we go. My throat's getting slightly better, I think, by the way, guys, so I'm very sorry that my throat's been really horrible the last couple of days, but it's getting on the mend. I'm drinking lots of tea, which is helping. Alright, so Nerchio on the right-hand side of Invader, Scarlett on the left in this game. This was the final game of the series. It's 2-1 up for Nerchio. So it was a very important game, but let me just give you guys a run-through of what you missed. We just watched the first game. The other two games, which we're not going to analyze because we don't have time for all of them, guess what unit Scarlett really liked building in all of them? It has wings. It's kind of like a, I don't know, it's like a tapeworm with wings or something. It's basically called a Mutalisk. It's something she likes every single game. And Nerchio at this point starts to establish that pattern. He starts to say, well, you're pretty obsessed with that unit. In that first game, I opened up with a very generic, safe opening. But here, well, obviously we're seeing hatch gas pull rather than pull first, but that's because on this map, it would be absolutely obscene to do an early pull, you know, on its own tangent. If you're in vertical spawns, it's reasonably close, but what pro player is going to just gamble on hoping it's vertical spawns? The horizontal spawn takes so long for your units to get around, like it's actually just silly. Your Zerglings have to go like, doop-de-doop, 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 doop-de-doop. Ugh, takes forever to get there. So both players are going to open up with a hatch gas pool, same opening this time. What we're going to see in this game, though, let's run through it fast-forwarded quickly. Give you guys a run-through of the game, then we'll go back and analyze. Is Nerchio, fast third base. Hey, wait a second. This time, his third went down before the Baneling Nest. Game 1, he was getting the Baneling Nest. Okay, well, I guess it's a longer rush distance on this map. That kind of makes sense because of that. But he is being a little bit greedier. Holy crap. 3-minute 10 double Evo chamber. Are you mad, Nerchio? Are you mad? No. He's identified Scarlett is playing macro almost every game. She's never going for an all-in. An all-in would suck in these spawns because the rush distance is so long. And she's always going for mutas. So he's just like, man, I want to get the upgrades. And that makes perfect sense. We've talked about how good Ling upgrades are. We talked about how in that previous game, he still was able to kind of push the mutas back a decent amount and do really well at denying her third because he had those Ling upgrades. So I think this was just a fantastic decision by Nerchio to go straight for these upgrades. He didn't have to make a single defensive Baneling. He kind of said, oh, I'm not going to make any Banelings unless I see her flood across the map. And then he brings out a big wave of Zerglings here. His 1-1's not finished just yet, but he's already going to go and try and cancel a third because, once again, Scarlett has gone for 2 base Mutalisk. Very similar to game 1. And Nerchio is just saying, well, you know what? I've got more production again. I'm just going to mass these Zerglings. I'm going to throw them at you. Oh, what else am I going to do? What else did we see was good in the previous game? Queens. So he's just jumping straight up to that point. We see a really... I mean, this is just such a cute strategy from Nerchio because he also drops a Nidus Worm. He skirmishes at her third a lot. Can't quite cancel it. But he's just got this Nidus Worm and he's just massing Queens and upgraded Zerglings, knowing his Zerglings are going to do really well versus Scarlet's. Queens are going to do really well versus Mutas. And we see the Nidus Worm starts going down there. Nerchio's running his Zerglings in. Look, got Zerglings in the main again. The 1-1's finished. Doesn't focus the drones very well there, so he mainly just damages them. Quite sloppy from Nerchio, only gets 1 queen for his trouble. But he's unloading all these queens out, and he's going to try and shove through. And this is a really cute creative strategy from Nerchio. Ling, Bane, 1-1 melee carapace, Queen, Ling, Nidus. But he thinks, look, you're normally going for mutas. You're going to have Zerglings without upgrades this game, because I see you're upgrading to those mutas. I don't think you're going to be able to deal with this. I'm going to put the pressure on. And it follows that same pattern of he knows that Scarlett's teching really hard. He knows it's very hard. If he can force army units out of her, as he is now, it's very hard for her. Either she just dies because she doesn't get the army units out, in this case because he's hitting incredibly hard, or she does manage to survive, but she doesn't get to use that third base very well. Now in this particular scenario, this was one of the most impressive holds, and the reason is Scarlett was actually planning to go into very fast roach timing behind her Mutalisks. She does lose all her mutas, so already that makes the trade it makes it okay for Nerchio in some regards, but because there's roaches coming out, just in time, she barely manages to hold. If these were just Lings, her Ling Bane would just overwhelm with these queens. But the Roach Warren was very fast. Even before saturating the third at all, she already had the Evo and Roach Warren going down before the Spire finished. And she just barely hangs on. So even though Nerchio's play was incredibly smart, Scarlett does defend it, but isn't behind this. Because, once again, check out that income. He's only up 5 workers, but there's a huge income disparity. And it comes down to how your income is allocated and how it's spread out. Of course, he's mining less gas, but gas isn't what he cares about right now. So Nerchio at this point, he's just kind of saying to himself, like, it doesn't matter, man. I've got this great mineral income. I've basically got 3 bases saturated. At its core, I have a lot more minerals to throw around than you. And he makes the very ballsy decision to say, even though you're building roaches and a big number of very good verse Zerglings, this is a huge map. Our bases are so spread out. Let's keep getting Ling upgrades. I'm not going to swap into my own roaches. Screw that. I'm just going to keep on upgrading these guys. And what he's also going to do is drop a Spire, which is fantastic. If he can get Mutalisks out, and Scarlett's still on just mass roaches against the Zerglings, then she's going to be in a lot of trouble. Now it turns out she is trying to build mutas, but she's only got a tiny bit of gas, so she can only build 2 right now. Nerchio, once he's established the minerals, we see him droning up, adding extra workers, and securing these gases, but only after he had that huge mineral income. He's still got these Zerglings. Knowing they're such a threat on such a big map, he's continuing to counterattack. And right now, a lot of players would panic and say, I've seen that ball of roaches, man. I'm afraid of a frontal attack. What if Scarlett just all-ins? But Nerchio says, look, I don't have a great response anyway, even if I kept my Lings at home. I mean, they're not going to beat those roaches in a big fight, even with a great flank. So my job here is to keep her at home. Keep coming in from multiple angles with those Zerglings. Keep harassing her, and then wait for the hard response, the big sudden response. So notice how the Zerglings here, they're keeping the units at home. They're keeping the threat active. High mobility units with high damage, saying if you have a walk across the map with your whole army, there's the threat of 40 Zerglings coming in, because, I mean, Scarlett can't see everything. It could be 40 Zerglings here, 40 Zerglings here, and they could just shred her economy so quickly. They could easily kill reinforcing roaches. So she kind of has to, like, go back and forth there, defending, and only now does she start to finally get a chance to get across the map. She's like, okay, I've cleared up those Zerglings, but at this point, Mutalisks are already on the way for Nerchio. Sadly for him, he got massively supply blocked there and had to build 8 Overlords at once. But with Mutalisks out, against a Roach Bane attack with only 2 Mutalisks of her own, he's managed to make the tech switch happen. He's managed to invalidate her composition. Even though he was in a bit of an iffy situation when his Nidus didn't work, he said, what can I use to invalidate your composition? He says, the threat of my army is those Zerglings, the counterattacks. You're going to have to keep investing in ground units to stop that, because we've seen in previous games, mutas just aren't good at stopping Ling run buyers. So Nerchio says, I'm just going to swap into my own mutas. I'm going to absolutely just take advantage of you that way. And even though there's so many roaches here, and this is such a scary moment for Nerchio, he's running his drones away, spreading them against the Banelings. Look at this, he's got a 4th base mining minerals already. And he loses the Spire, which totally sucks, but he's already got 5 more meters on the way, going up to 15 meters, and he just runs his drones away. He knows even though the roaches can do a lot of damage here, it's on a timer. And behind this, Scarlett does not have a big economy. Her 3rd's still not fully saturated, whereas Nerchio is mining from that 4th. Nerchio can easily replenish these drones. Scarlett, on the other hand, cannot replenish these roaches. She kills a lot of units. It's almost a worthwhile attack. I mean, she's way up in supply right now. but she doesn't have a response to the Mutalisks. And this is something you've always got to remember in any Mutalisk game. And a lot of players forget this. They get really confused in these situations because they start to think about like, well, this player's ahead this much supply, this player's ahead this much workers. But what we have to remember is that maths we did before with how much it costs to actually defend Mutalisks. And remember, this is different to the previous game where it was 5 mutas. 5 mutas out, we saw 3 spores, a couple lings kind of threatening a little bit, a few extra queens. You're fine. In this scenario, Nerchio's been building those Mutalisks a big wave off a 3 base economy. A big sudden wave. And this is 15 Mutalisks. It's much scarier. So let's look in game. Is there actually any response ready for Scarlett just yet? Her roaches are about to clean up. This is the moment where she's saying, like, I've got like only 10-15 seconds where I can keep the mutas back before they come over. What have we got at home for Scarlett? Now she's building the Hydra Den. She doesn't have a massive mineral income. She doesn't have excess drones. Any workers that she puts into spore crawlers are kind of coming away from her economy. And keep in mind, her bases are mining out. So she doesn't have the option to say, build heaps of spore crawlers and queens and just drone up her 4th to compensate for that. Like re-drone as well as add some extra drones to compensate for the minerals. Because how's she going to secure a 4th base? She doesn't have creep up there. She's got creep here. Maybe she could take this one. But the mutas are already about to get over there. How the hell are you going to have time to establish it? I mean, hell, you need to be dropping spores right now, Scarlett. And the thing is, she hasn't. She's building a few more roaches because she knows she has to be, has to kind of, you know, be ready for the counterattack. But even these roaches here are starting to get cleaned up quite handily. The Zerglings, you know, getting some decent wraparounds. And Nerchio is starting to make her turn tail. She's adding these spores now, but they are coming out of her economy. She's trying to skimp on spores. She's trying to get Hydras out, and she's trying to play this sort of, you know, like, I guess I'll just get enough Hydras out and keep attacking. Interestingly, she's adding Flyer Attack. That really needs to get cancelled. Mutas aren't gonna help her at all. But she's just in a very difficult position to deal with these. Whereas Nerchio on the other side of things, all he can do behind this is freely drone up. He's actually adding some Zerglings and, interestingly enough, Overlord speed, which I think has to be a misclick, as well as putting his own Spire back down. But he's got all the freedom in the world. There's so long before Scarlett can possibly do anything to him again. And even here, he comes in here to fight these queens, and there's a lot of transfuse, that's great. But that's such a bear hold. Like, Scarlett was so close to being overwhelmed there by those Mutalisks. She does defend bare bones, very few units, very well. And to be honest, Nerchio wasn't droning as quickly as he should have been. He's now droning up, he's adding all those workers. Let's fast forward a little bit. Catching stray Hydralisks is massive for Nerchio. He's still got 2/2 Zerglings, remember. The threat of these Zerglings is immense. And not just that, because he's already invested in those upgrades, something else becomes incredibly powerful, and that's the threat of a swap into Ultras. Ultras wreck Roach Hydra so one-sidedly. Infestation Pits finished, Hives finishing up the Spires. Why is the Spire there? Now, the reason the Spire is there is so Nerchio says, I've already got Mutas up. If she tries to swap back into Mutas knowing my Spire's dead, I'm gonna make sure I have plenty of Mutas. Not only that, but it allows me to build a bigger Muta count. And Mutas are fantastic against Hydras. If I'm in a good enough position that they can't just push across the map and force me to fight front on, if I can always just kind of go out there, not only hunt Overlords, like this is a fantastic split from Nerchio, just looking for Overlords or any counterattacking units, but he can then intercept reinforcements. He can come in here and force defense. Remember, Scarlett has skimped on her defense. She's built 4 Spore Crawlers in the main. The natural is wide open. The third has a single Spore Crawler up front. The queens are the closest thing to static defense these bases have, and look at this, the 4th base, completely exposed. Nerchio is saying, if I can keep the fighting on her side of the map, with this mobile composition, it's going to do incredibly well. So, Nerchio actually has managed to completely phase any sort of tech advantage that Scarlett's had this game out of existence. First of all, by forcing her to throw all her Mutalisks away against his Queen Nidus attack, and now swapping into his own Mutalisks, saying, well, if you're going to mass Roaches against my upgraded Zerglings, like, Roaches are what's really scary for those upgraded Zerglings, let's get my own Mutas, and he's in suddenly this fantastic position. He's got so much Lingbane, Ultra Cavern is on the way, he's got Adrenal Glands on the way, getting some Muta upgrades. If those Ultras get out, he just wins. But he doesn't want to throw the game away. So he's just putting a small link counterattack to say, look, if you're going to push me right now, Scarlett, you're all in. I'm going to take out any chance of your economy. And that is fantastic. Now, why is it amazing? Because it forces her to push in hard. Think about how Nerchio's army works here. This is a hypermobile, melee-based army. Essentially, he's fighting the ranged units, the positional units, infestors, that's your splash damage, hydralisks. Basically, this is a marine tank push. That's the best way to think about this as a Zerg player. These are your siege tanks, the hydralisks are your marines. All you need to do is come in from a flank, so you minimize the splash damage, aka fungals, aka siege tanks. If you come in from multiple sides, there's nowhere for the marines to split to. There's nowhere for the hydras to split to avoid the baneling splash. You want to engage on creep as well. If this army has to push deep on creep, then Nerchio's army will absolutely crush it. So just splitting off a small number of lings to force Scarlett kind of all in here, saying, look, if you fight before my ultras are out, I'm just going to wrap around and surround you. Scarlett realizes the position's bad, very cleverly pulls back, gets just 2 Mutalisks with a fungal, but she's so afraid to push. And justifiably so. She's in a really bad situation right now. But every second that goes by, these ultras come out. Nerchio doesn't just chase into the choke point, because he knows that's the one position where his army can trade horribly against that ranged splash damage army. He's continuing to look for counterattack angles, force Scarlett to multitask at home. And as these ultralisks are on the way, he knows that her time is running out of the hourglass. He doesn't need to fight. He doesn't need to press the issue. He's already got the mobile army up that's been threatening her, cutting down her economy, forcing her all in. She's stuck on 3 bases. Now he's about to get the hard-hitting front-on fighting unit, which is going to finish the game. And as we said early on in this video, Ultralisks are the power unit. They're the game finisher. They beat just about everything. Yes, Broodlords can kind of beat them, but Broodlords are super fragile units that just get shreked by a duct. And we see here a Nidus Worm pops. She's going to be reinforcing right into the battle. She's got so much Roach Hydra. And we talked about how this is a Marine tank army and how you want to flank versus Marine tank. Check it. Big 2-pronged attack here. Scarlett coming in. Banelings and Ultras and Lings from all sides. And this was one of the most disgusting battles in the entire tournament. Just over in an instant. Banelings killing everything. And Scarlett was forced to tap on out. GG's. So a very interesting game there. I think the key points are, of course, Nerchio's willingness to adapt to his opponent's style, saying, you're playing the same style, I can hard counter, especially because of the map. Because this map, in those spawns, the distance is so damn far, I don't need to be worried about a Roach attack, a Roach Bane. Why is that important? Because he's going upgraded Zerglings. Let's imagine Scarlett pushes with Roach Bane. Even a Queen Roach Nidus is kind of scary. What the hell is he going to do? He's like, well, I've got a whole bunch of Zerglings with 1-1 that's about to finish. It doesn't really do anything right now. He can try to build spines. You know, his own Roaches aren't going to be as good. There's this whole weak period around like probably 6 minutes in the game where he's like, well, I can pressure with Zerglings so I can usually see stuff coming. But if Scarlett was like just beelining towards some like Roach Bane push, he'd have a really tough time holding on against it. On a small map. On this big map though, I mean, it still might be a little bit of a threat just because of the way he's playing, but no one in their right mind would do that style. Keep in mind, Scarlett has no idea that he's doing this. He hides the Evo Chambers behind his natural and he puts pressure on her, making it very difficult for her to scout exactly what he's going for. Because of that, he feels very comfortable doing this. He knows there's no risk. He's like, well, why would you choose a strategy that's weak on the map when you don't even know that I'm doing the one thing that it's good against? So he says, okay, I can take that little bit of a risk. He also makes the really smart idea here where, because he's saying, well, Zerglings are great versus mutas, what else is good versus mutas? Queens. And he makes just those very smart adjustments with his economy. So remember, as we see throughout, he really focuses on minerals. He normally just gets a second gas. In this case, game, he gets a third gas as well. The reason he gets the third gas is just the Nidus Worm. But other than that, all he's focusing on is minerals. Using that third base for minerals, pumping out Lings and Queens. So when you're going for this sort of ground-based defense, 2 Mutalisks, you're countering it. Even if you're going for Hydras, you really want to initially focus on minerals because you've got to get queens, you've got to get spores, you've got to get all those mineral heavy investments. And to accommodate for that, you've got to have adjusted your economy. So Nerchio just plays very smart all in all, adapts very well. I think because, of course, in this game, Scarlett happened to be wanting to follow up with that very fast roach timing. I mean, if we look in game, you can kind of see her decision making, where from Scarlett's point of view, she has no idea what's going on except that he's just doing a shit ton of ling pressure, and she's like, "Oh, okie doke. You're making a lot of zerglings. You've been trying to tech up to ultras in a lot of these games. Like pretty much every game, he's been heading towards, you know, eventually, even if not early on, upgraded zerglings and ultras." So she says, "You know what? Let's get a spine. Let's start anchoring our defense." She says, "I've got mutas. Look, you're investing so much in these units. I think that I've just got to defend, keep the third base up because that's the mistake I made in game one, not getting the third up, and I'll be fine." Well, and she's thinking, how can I then counter pressure? How can I kill you? Because you're keeping me at home so long, I'm not going to be able to get across the map with my mutas to do the damage, you know, force the spore crawlers really early that I would like to. So I'm just going to defend. And she starts the Evo chamber and the roach warren very early. And she says, look, after about 8, 9 mutalisks, yeah, she's only got 8, she's not building anymore. After that, I'm probably just going to commit to a big wave of roaches with roach speed, go across that map, hit you before you can get ultralisks out, and kick your ass. And she's probably thinking, well, if he stops throwing Ling Bane at me, and I think he's actually building his economy, I'm going to scout. If he's going mutalisks, I won't even invest in the roaches. I'll just invest in more mutalisks. And I can, yeah, you know, I can win that way. But if he's fast teching ultralisks, I've got this beautiful roach attack option. Now that roach option actually saves her life here. As we said, it's what ends up defending this attack. The roach is coming out just barely in time. And those roaches really being the linchpin that allows her to survive. Of course, the Baneling's doing a very good job as well, but without the roaches supporting them, it would be very difficult. So a very interesting series, one where we got to see a very different way of countering mutalisks to just the Hydra pushes, which, well, I mean, we did see the Hydra push, kind of desperation Hydra push out of Scarlett. Obviously, Hydra pushes, you've always got to just push very hard and fast. You've kind of got to catch the muta player off guard, or you've got to have just such a big economy advantage. And you've got to hit before ultras come out. We saw Scarlett wasn't able to hit that timing. Nerchio just had so much stuff that even if she pushed in before ultralisks came out, she was going to get wrapped around by banelings and killed either way. So it's a situation where Nerchio managed to balance everything out very well. He really used mobility throughout the series with those zerglings to constantly make it awkward for Scarlett. He constantly made it so her mutalisks couldn't get across the map. Even through being aggressive, even though it didn't kill her, he killed her mutalisks, and guess what? He never got spore crawlers at home. He just cut so many corners because he understood what he was forcing in the game. He got, what, 1 spore crawler in his main base. That's literally the only anti-air he had after he loses these queens. He just managed to cut so many bloody corners. And, I mean, if you think about it, once she holds this attack, technically, she might have even been able to just go, oh, cancel roach speed, cancel +1, build 6 or 7 mutalisks, and go across the map. And that actually might have done huge damage. But who, when they're being attacked from all sides by Nidus Worms, by Queens, by all these different angles, and they're like so pressed against the wall, and she's just trying to hang on to 3 lives for dear life, 3 bases for dear life. She's just trying to defend. Who in their right mind says, let's cancel the upgrades, let's go get a bunch of mutalisks against, you know, this guy? It's very hard for her to realize he's cutting all these corners. So there's also a few kind of hidden advantages of aggression. That's actually a topic we're going to do completely separately, where because he's forcing her back, Nerchio has all the information, Scarlett has none. She's not able to see where he's cutting corners, and he always feels like he's 1 step ahead in this series. He cuts a few corners and just constantly is able to surprise her with his next step, surprises her with his upgraded zerglings and these queens, surprises her with the mutalisks shutting down her roach counterattack. And overall, I was just very, very impressed. So I really liked this series. I think it was a very interesting way of looking at the dynamics of what's going on. And before we answer questions, the one last thing I really want to emphasize as well is whenever you're looking at any in-game situation, this is something I'm always going to revisit, is think about things in those fundamental terms, like we were talking about in Game 1. Because Scarlett was teching 2-base muta, she was investing everything in her tech, everything in her economy. Nerchio who had the faster third base, had a bit more production, had no tech. He just had economy, so their economies cancelled out, right? Even though his economy was slightly different. He was going faster third, she was going faster gas, but that cancels out, right? So you think, okay, they invested roughly equally in economy, but then she's invested in tech, he's invested in army. And that's where you start to see a difference. And you start to see Nerchio say, well, I can attack you with my army, force you to build more army. And she's like, well, shit, I have to build more army to counteract that. But because of the way that was working out, she wasn't able to squeeze in the third base as well. She couldn't get that down. And Nerchio said a very smart adjustment. He kind of broke down the situation and he said to himself, well, if I can keep that action going, keep these army trades, because I'm not teching, I'm not trying to mine heaps of gas. I'm not trying to get mutalisks out or any of these expensive tech structures like a spire, 200 minerals, 200 gas. He's like, all I'm building is zerglings. I can easily match your zerglings, and because you're trying to get mutas out at the same time, I can build lots of drones behind it. I can actually use this third base. So breaking the game down to that fundamental level really starts to allow you to solve situations which otherwise seem really horrible. The number of times players saying, how the hell do I deal with mutalisks? And one thing you really do want to do is think about what they force, think about the situations that arise. So all right, to finish up, let's answer a few questions. As we have kind of been going on for quite a long time with this episode, but I just think it's a very enjoyable topic. So let's scroll on up, and we do see... But where says you got to say Zergo is so much better than it was in HOTS. I absolutely agree, 100%. Lovetool says, Pig, what could Scarlett have done differently to get in a better mid-game position? Now, I assume that question is from game 1. So game number 1, we think about that Frozen Temple game. What could she have done to get in a better mid-game position? I think committing a little bit less to her Zergling counterattacks. I think she did a great job with them, but I think she needed to squeeze in a third base earlier. And I think if she squeezed in her third base earlier and even delayed the Mutalisks, I don't think the Mutalisks were the most important thing, but at least a little bit less focus on mutas, then I think that would have been a good idea. I think because Scarlett, after she absorbed Nerchio's aggression, she got a little bit too focused on counterattacking. And she said, well, I've got the upgrade, let's do it. But then she's investing even more in army than she was forced into, as well as investing in the tech units. It just slowed down her third so much that was a problem. That being said, you know what, if Scarlett looks at that replay, I'm sure, you know, I want to get more episodes where I actually get pros in to give their opinions, because they're always going to have a completely different opinion. And if I think about the way, from my understanding of Scarlett as a player, I think she would look at that game and say, I was fine, I was in a good position, because I had Mutalisks, I had control over the map, I had better Ling upgrades for the vast majority of that game. I'm pretty sure she would say, I should have been the one killing his drones, and I should have been the one protecting all my bases. At most points in that game, she did have enough Zerglings. Even if she was down a little bit in Zerglings, I think she had enough to defend his counterattacks. I think she'll see the big mistakes happening as being involved with her. Whenever he counterattacked, she 1A'd her whole ground army after that single counter. He'd split into 3 places, and she was always a step behind it dealing with that. I think what she'd say is she'd be a little bit better at spreading some Banelings out defensively, microing those to actually stop the Ling run bys, leaving some Zerglings, maybe just like 6 or maybe like 8 Zerglings on your main base ramp. That's like a Mutaverse Muta tactic which people use, because run bys are so common in Mutaverse Muta. If you've got 8 Zerglings sitting on your main base ramp, when they try to run by, those Zerglings will automatically like wall off and start killing the Zerglings as they try to move past. Little tactics like that, as well as just better on-the-fly management. I think she feels if she managed to do that, she would have been more in control. And the moment those first ultras started coming across the map, she would have seen them earlier, and her mutas would have been on top of them, dishing out damage. And by the time they got to her base, they would have been much lower, because chitinous plating wasn't ready. Nerchio was really throwing the tempo at her. So I think if Scarlett just controlled that stage overall a little bit better, she may have been able to hang on, and then it would have been a much more even Ultralisk war. Subspace here says, what time in the game usually should you drop an Evo chamber in response to a possible Mutalisk build? When do you make the minimal 3 spores and extra queens? Evo in response to a possible Muta build, when do you make the minimal 3 spores and extra queens? Okay, so if you want to play this same style as Nerchio, let's try and think about it in terms of like, how would you execute it? It really comes down to your own preferences and how you'd play. Definitely a very advanced style to play. One great VOD, if you guys are actually interested, there's I wrote a ZvZ meta update on my blog on Team Liquid, and I referenced a game where Dark on Dusk Towers was doing a roach based play. he scouted, I believe it was Curious or Lucira was going mutas. And he was like, I think it was Curious. And he says, you're going Mutalisks. And he just says, well, in this case, he was on a bigger economy. He basically just droned up, only had the couple, like 3 or 4 roaches that he built earlier. He just built lots of queens. And around the time, this was around the time his lair was finishing when he scouted this with the Overseer, right? And he just said, okay, just drop double Evo Chamber. Go into those upgrades. He built 8 or 9 Spore Crawlers around his bases, built lots of extra queens, had like this squad of 6 or 7 queens, built a few Infestors, went straight to Hive. And he didn't really harass with the Zerglings much because they were both already kind of very cemented on 3 base. It was too late for him to do that. But if you're in a more action-packed game, there's more fighting going on early. Your opponent's going for this sort of very quick 2-base style muta like Scarlett's going for. I think it's more justifiable for you to get aggressive with your Zerglings. So the moment you realize it's happening, start squeezing in those Evo Chambers. It does depend how you build your economy. I don't think you can normally do it the way Nerchio did it in this last game we watched, where he's just like 3 minutes 10, double Evo Chamber, go. That's a bit greedy. You can try it out, definitely, but I think the way he did it in game 1 is much more reliable, where he says, you're going Mutalisks very fast, aren't you? Let's drop that single Evo Chamber, let's go melee upgrades. But I think the easiest way to summarize is if they're going 3-base muta, so they're building a big economy, then going mutas, you don't necessarily need to get the upgrades as fast. You won't necessarily realize what they're doing as fast. You can kind of just beeline towards Hive Tech a lot more. You don't need to be quite as aggressive until after you've fully saturated your 3 bases. If they're going 2-base mutas, it's going to be a much more tempo-packed game. And similar to that analysis we did in game 1, you're trying to deny their 3rd base using your superior production, droning behind that. So you're kind of in a much more fluid game. It's much more action-packed, and it's going to be much more based on how the fights are going, what the situations look like. So that's going to be very adaptive, something where you need to apply your own understanding, analyze each game as it comes, because every game is going to look a little bit different. Following up on that question, Northern Hawk has a very similar question. He said, Nerchio didn't have any information. You know, how can you choose to just go for these Evo Chambers yourself? Now, whoops, wrong button. Let's take a look. So, what we want to pay attention to is the fact that he sees a lack. It's not that he sees her going mutas, he sees a lack of her doing anything else. No 3rd base. His 3rd base is already down. At about 320, this is incredibly fishy. It's like, well, if you're going to go for a 3rd, you would have it down by now. What the hell are you doing? There's not many options. There really only is the common options, a Roach Queen Nidus, and 2-base muta. What else could be coming out of there? Could be Roach muta for sure. How could he confirm? Very easy. If he just ran his Zerglings around hers, saw the Baneling Nest at the front. Now, the reason he's not too eager to see that, he delays it a little bit, is because he already knows what she's doing. But he does see at this point, Baneling Nest in a spine. That tells him everything he needs to do. Your opponent doesn't have a 3rd. They're going Banelings. They're even adding a spine. That's 100% mutas. Even just the Baneling Nest plus 2-base tells you they're going for that style. There's nothing else they could efficiently be doing. It has to be 2-base muta. Now, obviously, you apply your own understanding at the level you're playing at, but at its core, there's always tells of different play styles. And even if you just drop the 2 Evo Chambers now, he'd still be getting those upgrades out very quickly. So there's lots of ways you can play it. Always use your own understanding. Don't think of it as something where you just want to blindly play a style. But think of it as, if you're playing just your normal economy game, oh, he's going mutas, and you want to try this style, drop your double Evo Chamber reactively, get your queens up, really focus on your mineral income, get some spores down. Once your upgrades kick in, you can start being aggressive a bit with a pack of Zerglings. Or, if you're very confident in your mechanics, you can do it like Nerchio. You can get across there with Lings early, do the constant pressure, try to deny their 3rd. Of course, how you actually apply this game knowledge always comes down to your own mechanics, your own style, your own understanding. I never want the daily to be about me telling you guys, just do this and you'll win games. It's always about learning the game, thinking about the game, and then you start to put that knowledge into action in your own way. Excuse me. Robo Roadkill says, would this style be effective against a player who turtles at home and use their superior gas economy to get ultras faster than you? Sorry, I'm kind of freezing up because I was reading 3 questions at once. Sometimes I think I'm like an idiot savant, where I'm like a genius who's like doing multiple things at once, and then I realize that I'm just an idiot. I was just reading through 2 other questions in my head while reading the other one. So Robo Roadkill says, would it be effective against a player who turtles at home and then gets ultras faster than you? Well, the thing is, you're going for your upgrades faster. You're not wasting gas on Mutalisks. So you should always have more gas than them. Even though you're focusing on minerals earlier, people get this idea that, well, they're getting gas earlier, therefore they should have more gas. But where's he spending his gas? Or in this case, where is she spending her gas? Mutalisks. Defensive Banelings against your upgraded Zerglings. You don't need to make as many Banelings because your Zerglings are just better at fighting. Not only that, but they're not going to get up their gas as quick as you, necessarily. Even if they beeline towards gas, they're going super fast gas or super fast 2-base muta. Where's the 3rd base gas? That's going to be so late. So even though you've delayed, you've just been sitting on 2 gas while they're on 4 gas for maybe a minute and a half, where they're mining way more gas than you, double your gas. You're like, shit, how do you ever catch up from that? Well, the thing is, because you build your mineral count higher, you can then explode into gas. You can then grab 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th gases all at once. So all the gases on your natural, all the gases on your 3rd. If you take all of that, even if it's a minute later that they've been mining 2 gases, well, their 5th and 6th gases, their last ones are going to be another minute later than yours usually. So overall, at most, they've mined a little bit more gas than you. Maybe a couple hundred. But if they build 8 Mutalisks, that's 800 gas. So overall, in the gas counter, they will be lower than you. So simply by the order of how it all works out, it's going to work out that way. The only argument for how you could end up behind in gas is that you invest so much in Zerglings that you're not actually building your drone count at home, you're not building your gas, whereas they are. But in that scenario, how the hell are they defending all your Zerglings if they're investing so much in economy? What are you doing wrong? The only way that's happening is if you're running your Zerglings into Banelings, you're taking really bad engagements on the map. So it should always balance out. All right. I think that's going to be very good. One last question. Joke Jane says, what if it's a safety Baneling nest when you spot that at the front of the base? What is that? Well, it's a safety Baneling nest. They're still building a safety Baneling nest. Even if they don't commit to it that much, they're already investing money. That's inefficiency. Of course, there's other signs of Mutalisks, spotting gases and all sorts of little things. It's up to you to piece the picture together yourself. However, you can always tell what's going on. There definitely are builds out there where you say, oh, well, someone shows a Baneling nest and a spine crawl at the front, then they cancel the spine, never use the Baneling nest, and they actually do a Roach Nidus. Number one, it's going to delay the build by a good amount. So already you've got the potential to be safer against it because it's delayed. On the other hand, we can't think about every single tricky scenario. You need to go through those on a case-by-case basis and figure out how to be solid against those. And that's its entire own topic, which I could talk about for hours and hours. So let's finish the VOD up here. I've been rambling, doing a few too many questions. I think we should stick to 2 or 3 questions in future. I might get someone to help me vet and choose those questions for me.
For a beer or a small part of your next webcam, hashtag no homo, hashtag selfie.
Thank you very much, Leon Blue. We'll be getting a new webcam very soon. So guys, that is going to summarize today's session. We are getting a new overlay for Out of Game, by the way, so we can have like Pig Daily written up here and some other stuff rather than just my normal overlay. But I do want to say a big thanks for hanging out. Any other questions? Yeah, you guys, we can continue the discussion in chat, but that's good for now. Oh, Abatha code. We're going to give away an Abatha code. So hang around in chat. Prepare a number in your head. We're going to do a random number generator draw. For you guys watching on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back tomorrow with another daily. Don't forget to hug a cactus, lick a walrus, and of course, punch a penguin in the cankle. Thanks for hanging out, guys. That's all for now. I'll see you all later. Goodbye and good night.